Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. It is December the 23rd. Oh my god, how is it December the 23rd? I have absolutely no idea. I've already a week into my 2.5 weeks off from work, which is mental. I cannot believe that. But yes, it's nearly Christmas, so Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everyone who's watching this video. I hope you have a great time. I'm going to be spending time with my mum and dad this Christmas here in the UK, the whole tier situation thing. I'm currently in tier 2 and I'm in a social bubble with my mum and dad, so we're able to spend Christmas together, which is wonderful. We're not able to see my sister, and her kids and her husband, which is really sad, but it is what it is, and here's to 2021 that we're able to be together again, and I'm able to film videos with my sister again. We have got a mammoth list of videos that we want to make and post on my channel, but until this whole COVID situation is sorted, that isn't going to happen. But you know, when it does, we're going to be making video after video after video, and my sister is like, the moment we are able to meet, she is staying over at my house and we're going to do this. So I'm looking forward to that in 2021. What else have I been up to? So I've had my week so far, 1 week off from work. Work was mammoth, the manic the last few days that I was in. And I actually didn't start reading the book I am here to review until it was last Friday. So it's been less than a week, just under a week, since I started reading this book. But I just finished this like 5 minutes ago. So I was like, right, turn the laptop, film the review, get it uploaded, and then I don't have to think about it over the Christmas break and such. And that is The Last Hours by Minette Walters. Right, so just to give you a bit of a backstory, my mum really likes Minette Walters' writing. She'd read various books of her years and years ago and such, and as far as I know, she still reads Minette Walters' books. Then my sister, because my mum liked them so much, read some Minette Walters. I never got into. I didn't understand. I was so focused on other things. I lived in my fantasy world and such when I was a teenager. I didn't care about crime writing and all that lot. Didn't give a toss. So she just kind of passed me by. And then my mum and dad bought me this book about 2 years ago for my birthday, and it's just sat on my bookshelf and I've never picked it up. And I decided, what the heck, when I was going through my to be read bookcase for 2020, and yeah, so I picked it up and I thought, right, let's give this a go. So Minette Walters is a crime novelist. She has won so many awards over the years, especially focusing on one of her books in particular called The Skulls Bridle, and that is the book that I distinctly remember my mum having and my sister reading. And it is so strange because I don't know if you're aware what a Skulls Bridle is, but it basically is like a cage around a woman's head that was worn, and it had a metal shaft that went into her mouth that pressed down on her tongue so she couldn't speak, and it was like a punishment thing, that women got forced to wear this and dragged about, and people would be horrible to her as her punishment for whatever she said or for whatever reason that she's been put in this thing. And The Skulls Bridle, this crime book, is where a woman is found naked in a bathtub with a skull's bridle on her head. And it's all the mystery of who killed her and why she got the skull's bridle, all that jazz. And I distinctly remember this image of the front cover of the book. And I don't know if it scared me or what. It sent a chill down my spine of this crime scene of this woman naked, dead in a bathtub with a skull's bridle on her head. And maybe that's what kept me away from Minette Walters. I don't know. but whenever I hear her name, that's the image that automatically comes into my head. So I was a bit weary about going into the last hours. Minette Walters wrote a lot throughout 70s, 80s and such, and then she took like this 10-year gap of not writing. She came back with one novel, and then she went into the last hours. So this is after a long break, and there'd been one book before this. And The Last Hours is actually a historic-based book. In case you don't know what it's about, it is about a woman called Lady Anne, who lives in Dorchester in 1348. It starts in July 1348, and she's married to Sir Richard, who owns this area of Dorsetshire, and they have a daughter called Eleanor, who's a stuck-up, spoiled brat who I didn't get on with Eleanor at all. And Sir Richard goes away. He's going away for a couple of weeks to do this, that, and the other that he needs to do. And whilst he's away, it is a messenger arrives saying that a pestilence has been found in nearby areas, and he's basically just passing the word around that this is going on. So Lady Anne has to then take control of her people and such, and basically protect them. And this story follows throughout July and into the summer and such, to do with following Lady Anne, her trying to protect her people, protect her family, and there's things that happen along the way. There's some mysteries, there's some very gruesome stuff that happens, and so it follows through this period of Black Death, this woman who has to take charge of her people. So that's the gist of the story. So, as I said, going in, I was like, Minette Walters, I had this vision of the Skulls Bridle going into this. And I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell is going to go on. Very, very clear from the very first page, the very first chapter, should I say. She knows what she is doing. I am not kidding you. In the first 10 pages, I got Anne's full history, Eleanor's history, Richard's history, their marriage. We learned about Thaddeus, her servant, how he's a bastard child in his family, how he is treated, how Eleanor has got a crush on him, and Eleanor is due to be engaged to this guy Sir Peter that she doesn't want to be engaged to. And it was like, this is the first 10 pages out of a 500 odd page book. Jesus. She knows her stuff. Now, I because I haven't read any of the Minette Walters books, I didn't know if this was her first historical fiction. I think it is, but I'm not certain whatsoever. If you know, if I got it wrong, if it is, this is like a second, third, whatever historical fiction, let me know in your comments below. But I was like, damn, okay. Compared to other historical writers, some historical writers really like to bog you down with the detail because they want it to be as genuine as possible. So they talk about daily routines and the way that people eat and stuff like that, which you don't necessarily need to know. She doesn't deal with that. She's like, no, I've got enough stuff going on. I've got to, get this going at the pace I need to get going. And as soon as I got through the first chapter, because she gave me all that information in such a succinct way that told me all about the world and gone, right, now we're going to introduce the messenger and the Black Death and such and take you on this journey, I felt so comfortable, and I really appreciated that. Really appreciated that. I felt like I was on sturdy ground, which is brilliant. Now, when it comes to the elements within this book, I do want to seriously flag that there are trigger stuff in this book. There was something that got revealed near the end of the book, which I was not expecting whatsoever. I was like, oh, holy shit, that came out of nowhere. And the way, okay, the I'm trying to explain this without revealing what it is because I don't want to spoil. There is a character who was, let's face it, manipulated. A very young character who was seriously manipulated, and she is describing what she felt about this situation, and because she was manipulated, she saw it as good when it was seriously bad. And the way in which Minette wrote that, she wrote it speaking from that character's point of view and describing how nice it was and how lovely it felt, and it was the love that they had been longing for. And I was like, oh my God, it made me feel sick. I was like, oh, holy Jesus, this is wow. But in a way, it's necessary to understand, because then when I started thinking back at that character throughout this book and things that had happened, all the puzzle pieces slotted together. I totally understood good relationships, strained relationships, bad relationships with people that this character had, because of this thing that she held so dear to her. And then the response that she got from somebody else, I was like, oh, wow. Minette. Oh, girl. Wow. Whew. I was really, really happy with the response that Minette wrote to that. And bloody hell, she knows how to write characters, especially strong women. And I liked that also that she looked at things from multiple different layers. When I'm talking about things, I'm not talking about necessarily just events that are going on. I'm talking about people, the complexities of people, the choices that people make. So, for example, Thaddeus. I love Thaddeus. I thought he was great. And in his home, he's very much felt like he is the odd one out. He was a bastard child to his mother, Eva, and she is looked down on because of that. He is looked down on because of that. But even though it does get to him on a day-to-day basis, he doesn't allow it to define him. He fights against it. And he's such a well-rounded character, and I loved that. And then you have other people in kind of similar situations who have let it get to them, and seeing what impact that has on them. So she looks, she's it's very multifaceted. That she looks at a certain thing in multiple different aspects. And like with the Black Death, that's, you know, this pestilence in the land that Lady Anne is trying to protect her people from. That gets looked at in multiple different things, from the really poor to the really rich, to the middleman, to why has that person died but that person has lived. It's so interesting how she breaks down certain things. And because of this, I am really, really intrigued to read other books of hers that are completely one book narrative. Because the last hours, until I started flicking through it the other week when I announced I was reading it next, I didn't realise that this was a 2-book story. I thought it was a 1-book story. So until I got to the back and it said, oh, excerpt from first chapter of the sequel, The Midnight Hours. And I was like, oh, okay. So I really like to see how she handles a situation in a 1-book place. So this is why I think I really want to read The Skulls Bridle. And I got recommended The Icebox as well. My mum said that was absolutely terrifying. So I'm going to check those 2 books out, definitely. But for a historic novel with such an interesting premise and such interesting characters, it is so well paced. It is so well constructed. And this is only part 1 of 2. You could very much tell that it was a multiple book narrative, and I don't mean that as in a negative way, like it was really slow and all the. No, what I mean by that is that you genuinely have this underlining feeling throughout that this is a continuous thing, that because the Black Death doesn't just pop up, it happens, it disappears, and it never gets heard from again. No, this is a continuing thing that is going to carry on through, and she ties up certain storylines and such as she goes along, but you always have this underlining feeling that something could be creeping up, and then the final chapter is where you learn what that underlining feeling was, and then you're like, oh shit is about to go down, you know. And then that's when the book ends. So I'm like, okay, she's really set up the second book really well. And I've heard that Thaddeus, from reading the blurb that is on the back of the book, but obviously on on the internet, because I don't have the physical book, that Thaddeus is the kind of main character, as it were. And I really hope that with him in the second book, these events, whatever plays out, because I have no frigging clue what's going to happen, that he finds a way to be comfortable with his life, with his world, with his situation, and that he's okay. I really want him to be okay. But until I read the book, I have no clue, so we just have to see. But anyway, I better read an excerpt of this. I haven't read an excerpt for the past few books because they've all been like middle or last books of a trilogy, and I feel like I know this is the first of a 2-parter, but I'm like, no, I want to read something. So here we go. I'm gonna read something to you. So this just kind of describes the kind of gruesomeness of the Black Death. So there are some descriptive stuff in this, nothing triggering, because as I said, the triggering stuff is near the end of the book, but I just wanted to flag the trigger stuff in there just in case anybody's going to be reading this book after seeing this review. So okay, so this is Thaddeus, and he has there are people, basically they've locked down the castle kind of areas, and there's a moat around it, and there are people on the other side of the moat who are Sir Richard's men, and Thaddeus has decided to cross the moat to go see them, kind of because he needs to, because Lady Anne needs to know what the heck is going on with them, but also to find out what is actually going on outside of the castle borders to report back to Lady Anne, so she gets an idea of the number of people that are dead, who are ill and such, so that they can figure out how long they're going to be possibly in this lockdown. Sound familiar to what's going on in the world at the moment? And so this is him going out and meeting with people outside. So there's some disgusting stuff that gets said in this, but you know, you guys can handle it, I'm sure. So that night, lit by a bright moon, Thaddeus slipped into the dark water of the moat beneath Alan Startout's northern guard position and swam in a long, slow stroke to keep ripples to a minimum. He pulled himself out on the other side and lay still on the grass until Alan raised a hand to confirm that his departure had been unobserved. Even so, he moved at a crouch through the peasant strips, taking cover where he could behind unharvested wheat and rye. The fewer who knew of his nighttime visits to Giles, the better. There'd be no holding anyone to Lady Anne's rules if it became known that Thaddeus was breaking them at her command. Once inside the shelter of the dwellings in the village, he stripped off his sodden shirt and wrung out the water. It was all he was wearing. Even his boots remained under Alien's watchful guard for fear that Eva's hostile eyes would notice their dampness tomorrow. Eva, as I said, is his mum. So, she was ready to use anything to vent her spite on Lady Anne, and it wouldn't worry her as she brought down her son in the process. She could tolerate her husband's scorn more easily than she could Thaddeus's. The door of John Truebird's hut stood open, and Thaddeus could see into the interior. Giles had been burning candles to illuminate it, since Sir Richard, delirious with fever, had cried out for the light of God to shine on his face. Perhaps he believed the guttering flames were indeed divine, for Giles said that he'd become easier in his mind afterwards. Thaddeus thought it more likely that Lady Anne's medicines had dulled his pain, but whatever the cause, Sir Richard seemed to die peacefully enough. The previous night, Thaddeus had dug a grave in the far corner of the common pasture and watched at a distance as Giles placed Sir Richard's body across the black charger and walked the animals up the highway from the village. He marvelled at how gently Giles lifted the dead weight of from the horse's back, and how reverently he laid his master in the earth, saying a prayer as he did so. Perhaps Giles thought that Thaddeus would find such kindness strange, for he had called out an explanation as he shovelled dirt over the corpse. "If I deny this man forgiveness, I cannot ask it for myself." "You won't need it, sir," Thaddeus answered. "We expect you to return to us in good health. Lady Anne believes that you have an inner strength that defies the sickness." Giles gave a hollow laugh. "If she's so confident, why does she keep sending you to pick my brains? Are 14 days too long to wait for answers?" "It depends who comes up the road, sir. Single riders don't worry her, but an army of frightened people will. We can't hold off 100 if they encircle the moat and enter at the same time. The more you tell us now, the better prepared we will be." Giles shovelled a last spadeful of earth over Sir Richard and reached for the charger's reins. "You must paint red crosses around the boundary walls to mark strangers afraid of what's inside. I will do the same on the doors in the village if you bring me the means." He left the spade on the ground at the distance from Sir Richard's grave. "Have you the energy to dig another pit tonight, large enough for 2? The captain and the bailiff will not last through tomorrow, I think." He'd been right about Fawcett, whose body now lay shrouded on the ground outside John Truebird's dwelling, but de Bartlett still clung to life. The captain sat propped against a pile of rushes, naked from the waist up, drawing loud, rasping breaths through his open mouth. Every detail of his suffering was visible to Thaddeus. Grotesque, misshapen swellings, livid with poisoned blood, clung like clusters of apples to his neck, while small boils, some oozing pus, had erupted across his chest and arms. More terrible than anything, his right hand, resting on his lap, was black to the wrist as if it had been dipped in tar. Even at 30 paces, Thaddeus could smell the poor man's stench, and he wondered how Giles could tolerate being so close. He knelt at de Bartlett's side, cooling his brow with a moistened cloth which he dipped from time to time into a bowl of water. His movements were clumsy and rough, but the compassion behind the gesture caused tears to flow freely down de Bartlett's face. "You should leave," he whispered. "You will die if you don't." "I said I would not, sir. Would you have me break my word?" "You owe me nothing. It troubles me to think how badly I've treated you in the past. We might all have lived if I'd listened to you." "Be at peace, sir. Nothing you could have said to the master would have persuaded him I was right. We left because Lord Peter was ailing. He had remained well, we would still be in Bradmain." A long silence followed, punctured by de Bartlett's rattling breaths. After several minutes he spoke again. "I have little time left. Will you hear my confession? God may judge me less harshly if I acknowledge my faults." "Say what is in your heart, sir, but do not fear God's judgment. He created you in love, not hate or anger." Thaddeus stepped away, unwilling to intrude further. Whatever sins the captain carried on his conscience were for Giles's ears only. Even without the authority to absolve, there was no better man to ease another's passing. So as you can see, Minette Walters has she just has this interesting ability to mix the grotesque with sadness and quite, compassion and such, but also, Thaddeus has got to have this logical thing on his head that this is happening. I have to report back to Lady Anne. I have to tell her all, get all these facts and figures and such. As well, and do it in secret, because if anybody sees him, then they could, because he's doing this in secret, escaping the castle to go out amongst the people and such, he could get done and be banished, because Lady Anne will have no choice but to banish him if everybody knows. So it's a very kind of eerie scene. And to get that balance, like I said, of the grotesque with heart and such is a really, really interesting thing. And it was so nice to read, even though it's about the Black Death. I know that sounds weird, but it was. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Last Hours. So would I read this book again? Yes, I would. I think I definitely would. It'd be interesting to read it as a second time round, because I know things now that I didn't know at the beginning of the book, and it's the puzzle pieces, as I said, falling together. To actually read it through at the time, rather than remembering back to those puzzle pieces, I think that'd be a really interesting experience. Would I read more of Minette Walters' books? Yes, I certainly would. I'm really, like I said, I'm intrigued to read a single book narrative of hers, to see how she deals with pacing and such. And yeah, definitely look into the ones that my mum recommended. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I definitely would. I think that if you're into like Ken Follett, like I am, or CJ Sansom, you know, those kind of authors, and I would recommend giving The Last Hours a go. Very, very strong historical piece, and I'm intrigued to also read the sequel to find out what happens to Lady Anne, Eleanor, Thaddeus, Giles, and all the other characters who we first encounter in this book. All right, guys, I think that's it then. So, have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts once I've finished reading Scythe, by Neil Schusterman, which was a birthday present to me from my sister back in June, which I haven't gotten around to reading yet. So I'm going to read it, and it's going to be my last book. Oh, 2020, my last read, yay! And I've already planned what I'm doing for 2021 and 2022. I know, I've got myself organised. This is very rare. I'm thinking that far ahead. But so despite it being a crappy year around the world, for me, for my reading, it's been a good year. But I will go over more of that when I come to my review of the year. And I cannot believe, actually, in 3 days' time, I will have gone a whole year without buying a book, apart from obviously Common Strike, because that was my one book leeway. But I'm like, in 3 days, I'll have gone a year without buying a book. That is mental. I will have won my challenge. Oh my god. But yeah, I'm very excited for 2021, and we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I'm signing off now. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. Be safe out there, and have as wonderful a time as you can. Sending my love to everyone who watches this video at this time of year. Love you all. All right, guys. Bye.